My name's Michael Harrington. I'm a professor of music and music business or music management at William Paterson University in Wayne, New Jersey. I've been there for a month. My background is music. I started out by seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan and getting a guitar the next day, and I was a professional when I was 12, and I've always made money, and my interests have always been in music. So it's a long love of the stuff. My business background is just odd and unstructured and untrained, just making some money, making mistakes, and learning from that, and being involved in some consulting and advising to people who are trying new ventures. Or what I mainly do outside the university is work in copyright infringement lawsuits and things like that. So I've learned business in a kind of funny, indirect way. I feel I'm often self-taught, that you just go experiment, you try something. You want to learn how to play something by Stravinsky, you pull up your guitar or piano and start figuring it out. I kind of had that approach to all this, but I learned business parts of it from being paid to do music and then sometimes not receiving the money or various misadventures along the way. I kind of learned it that way, and learned by having friends in the music industry and then getting more and more involved in different aspects of being a professional musician. You should learn a lot. You're supposed to, because things are going to happen to you. If you don't learn from them, you probably just stop doing it. I got into this copyright world as a consultant kind of perfectly by mistake. I didn't plan it, I didn't know what it was, but I think it came from living in Nashville, where there are a lot of musicians, there are a lot of copyright interest, there are copyright lawsuits. And I work I'm pretty familiar with a lot of kinds of music. I do a lot of rock, classical, country, jazz, world music, a lot of hip-hop stuff, R&B. There's nothing I won't fool in. And as a professor, I've been fortunate over the years to create about 18 or 19 classes in different areas. What I would usually do is say, well, I would listen to what my students might want to learn, and it's often something I was trying to learn, or something I was just learning on my own that I wanted to work in and eventually get to teach and know about. So I'd buy huge amounts of CDs, study, go to concerts, meet musicians, and learn the stuff and teach those things. So it ended up that I had enough experience, I guess, in these different areas that people would want to hire me for my musical opinions. So I kind of get, when you're an expert witness, you learn about copyright because you get asked about it. And you have your musical opinion, but you have to know what the law is about, what copyright's about. So I had to learn that as well. And I found it fascinating. It's extremely interesting. And I just started kind of as a fluky thing by being called by attorneys. When you see what's going on, when you're in academia, it's very easy and tempting maybe to get isolated and to say you're dealing with the best people. These are situations we can create. There are no market forces per se in a teacher-student exchange or teacher-professor to entire class. If you're in the outside world as well, though, you can see, this is what's going on out there. And students would be better off knowing things about that. I'd have insight into how it's really going because I'd be in various situations and I can learn from them. And I'd, of course, share those things, unless there are specifics I can't mention, but I would share the nature of the situations out there and what I think they should be learning about and what they should be doing and thinking about. Because in academia, there's often a tendency to say, well, what you do is you do well as an undergraduate, and then there's fellowships and assistantships. You go to grad school for free. You have a little stipend and you teach, and then you go on to get the next degree, the doctoral degree, and then you go back and you teach. And that is an interesting world, to just do that. I think it's okay, but to me there's more to it. There are other things that are going on, that the better I am on the outside, the better I'll be back in academia. And the better I am also as a professor, the more clout and abilities I might have on the outside. I think the two complement each other. I really would never want to give either of them up. Well, so many students are going to, grow up thinking a cell phone is normal, a computer is normal, Google, good search engines and video games, all kinds of things are just normal. That's great. They have students who are 18 far more tech savvy than people who are in their 40s and 50s. That's obvious. The students need to continue and get better at what it is they're doing, and of course have an internet presence. I would think, well, why wouldn't you be, Facebook, MySpace? Why wouldn't you have videos of what it is you do? If you're if you're an actor, why wouldn't you put something up of you on YouTube? If you're a guitarist, if you're a choreographer, whatever it is you do, be publicizing it. Grab your website. Have your yourname.com, .net, .pro, whatever it is you're going to do. Why not start to do that in addition to the simpler things like Facebook? If you're not paying attention to technology and getting better at it, and the internet, and learning from that, it's really, really a bad situation. The colleges can also take advantage of that by reaching the students that way. Why not have your class on Facebook, deal with them that way, in addition to normal interactions or some other situations where you can communicate more? There are a lot of things that can be done that aren't being done yet. Or people think, well, or it even gets to the point where, and I understand this, where some faculty might not like the idea that students bring a laptop to class because they can just go ahead and be surfing the net, playing games and doing whatever, not paying attention. And that's unfortunate. If they do, they tend to, maybe the professor isn't that good, maybe they just don't feel like learning, maybe their parents are paying their tuition or something and they're not, feel driven. But so many things could be taking place by using the technology. You can have, one of the great things now is you have access to so much information and so many current things that you didn't in the old days. It used to be you had to wait till the news at 6 p.m. or so to know what was happening. Now you know so many things going on. You can participate. There are so many groups to try to influence and influence either lawmakers, or there's a lot of things that you can do with technology. And I just see that universities don't seem to take advantage of that enough.
Are they falling behind?
I think so. I think some great opportunities are going away. I think universities, the traditional ones that seem to have, buildings. I know University of Phoenix has buildings, but that's what I'm getting at. This online stuff, why wouldn't someone take advantage of universities or higher ed that seems to reach them and be more pertinent to what is they want to do? I think the regular universities, with the incredible cost of tuition and the way it's going up so fast, why wouldn't they try to be better and to try to compete with these upstarts who are reaching students in more convenient ways? There's that part of technology and the internet that's, I think, regular universities aren't doing enough with. Some really are. There are these enlightened schools that offer online education that's probably as good as the in-classroom education, but there aren't that many. That's something that universities need to get better with. The students do come in knowing, almost all of them, coming in being tech savvy and understanding a lot. They may have had their second, third iPod, fifth iPod. Their phones have all kinds of things that entertain them and ways in which they communicate with each other. The students are usually really good at it. Like you mentioned, faculty, you'll have some very distinguished, accomplished people who may be in their 40s, sometimes 30s, sometimes 50s, 60s, who got so far in life without that stuff. People who still don't have cell phones, or, I use the university computer to do the emails, and I got on the internet, so that kind of thinking. Some of these people will think, well, look, I did get this far without it. And Benjamin Franklin did, and George Washington did. And sometimes technology is a distraction. And just because it's a sleek new iPhone doesn't mean what takes place on it is really as cool as the looks and the tech of it. So the people who fear the tech and haven't used it much sometimes will say, well, I'm not going to go learn it, or they can get that from someone else. When in fact, if the professor did learn it better, they'd have better ways of communicating, and they could have access to more information. So I think that's one of those problems that's significant, and where's that going to turn out? Faculty have to get better at this. Universities have to say, well, it's another opportunity to give students access to ideas, to jobs, to all kinds of things that we haven't had till now. I mean, I think you can no longer say, I'm just not going to be tech proficient. I'm not going to deal with the internet except to answer email. I think those days are long gone, and they should be. Any music school should be thinking along the lines of tech, because what is the outcome? You want the student to get employed, whether it's being a professor, whether it's being an orchestra player, but they're going to have to know what's out there beyond the typical professions. To teach, play, teach and play, there's much more to it. If the college and the university is not looking to present these opportunities and to help the students, and also to learn from the students about what's going on, I mean, the students themselves can tell you so many things about what's happening. I just think that it's almost criminal to be ignoring this, as so many of them seem to be. Well, use the word entrepreneurship, use the word business. Business is a part of your life, whether you want it to be or not. And entrepreneurship, I think everyone is an entrepreneur in the sense that you paid a lot of money to go to a college. Yeah, that's a ton of money. And what was the expected result? It was risky. You were taking chances. You were being entrepreneurial by just kind of advancing. You can think of entrepreneurship in that way, that you have this investment in you with no guaranteed outcome. So you have a bachelor's degree. So you have a master's or a doctorate. So what? What does that mean? That's not going to do much for you unless you do some other things along the way. So I think the idea of telling a student that business has been around you anyway, and entrepreneurship, I think sometimes it's just saying, take advantage of all the skills you have and try that. If you think you can't do it, so try it again. You fail at it, keep failing at it, if it seems like something you want to do. So I think in the idea, you give them a pamphlet, you give them information, and I think look at the models of people who've done entrepreneurial things, who've been entrepreneurs. What's worked, what hasn't worked? Did it work because it was the right time, the right place, the right people? Was everything, why did it work? And also, why didn't something work? Maybe it wasn't the right time, maybe it wasn't done the right way. I think those things, you have to instill that in, well, faculty should know more about this. We as faculty, say you just go to a college, in situations, opportunities always come your way. The newspaper calls, television, radio calls you for an opinion. You give it, or you say, oh, I don't know, and you hand it to another colleague. Do you take advantage of situations like that? Do you speak to an audience before you perform? And I mean, whether you're classical, whether you're rock, how do you interact? What are you doing as an entrepreneur anyway? What are you doing outside of your normal job? You should be doing a bunch of things. I think students should see professors doing those things. And then they should have the idea that, well, you know, my degree says this, but I do this. Why is it you have to be so channeled into a small, restrictive zone? I see that happening way too much with education, that if you have a degree in oboe performance, playing the oboe, how many professional oboists are there? Probably not many. Well, I think the oboist would think, well, I'm either going to teach it or I can develop some other skills. And try things. I think that's the same for someone who plays an instrument that's more common and there's more need for, or who has an occupation there's more of a need for. A CPA is not going to be out of work in a major city, I would think, with all the people you have. An oboist would be. So what is it you need to do, and are there other areas you can venture into? So in that sense, I think that has to always be, I think you would introduce that really early in someone's career, like day 2, freshman year. Just say, oh, and what do you think you're going to do? What interests you? The idea of helping a student pursue the things that interest you, and then how is it you could make money from it? Money and music are rarely mentioned in music schools, and they should be. They're not at odds with each other. There is an awful lot of anti-money feelings. There's resentment towards people who might make more money on the outside than they do teaching. I've got in trouble 30 years ago for using rock music to teach classical music theory. But I heard wait a second, these notes in Bach, I heard them in the Beatles, and I hear similar things going on. Well, why am I wrong to equate the two? I remember years ago applying, and part of it is the nature of music schools have always been just often at odds with society. So we do music. This is what people do. This is the highest thing human beings do. Making money is making money. It's crass. You wash your hands, it's dirty. And I can remember music school saying to me, like, I applied for a well-known music school, and they liked my compositions. I was accepted from that point of view, but they asked me what was the instrument, we're looking forward to your audition. They asked, what do you play? And I said, classical guitar. And they replied, oh, I'm so sorry you don't play an instrument. And that was Juilliard, and that was 1972. So, I don't play an instrument. So, it's been, music schools have been just so out of touch. And, that to bring, where would music come into, where would money, come into music and rules of music theory, or Bach did this? Do we know how much Bach made, or Beethoven? That we think these are these inspired pieces. And yeah, they're inspired, and it's great craft, but he also had to get this thing done. It had to be played on Sunday. It's a gig. A gig sounds bad, but it's a financial obligation to his family, to himself. Music schools have often been, saying we can't talk these two, or that's what the business school does. Music, we do this. So if you want to learn that stuff, you go there. I think you can incorporate some ideas of business, of self-preservation, of not getting eaten by the wolves. You need to present those, a musician presenting them to music students, professor to students. You should certainly bring some of that in. If you want to learn accounting and some more technical stuff, likely the music professor is not going to be that good at teaching that. I won't be, for example. So of course you kind of do that as well. But I think the thing, they're complementary. And you mentioned the business skills and the music skills. I've made the connection before that I really enjoy this, that when you are performing, you're improvising, a bunch of players in a room haven't met each other. We start to play, we listen, which means we're going to elevate that person. He or she's going to get to play some notes, we're going to hold back. Now, at some point, I'm going to be able to come in and I'm going to play something, and if I respond to that person, I can say play my licks compared to what he may have played, and by doing that, I can give some type of honor, deference to that, or I can say, it should have gone like this, and I'm better than this, and I'm glad we got your part out of the way. So, and that's for everyone in the room, how they're going to complement each other, or attack, or criticize. To me, that situation of improv in a music situation, how you respond to the notes you heard, is really similar to how the real world works in the business world. You're in a group of people. Who's the loud one? And this is the loud one who's really funny, really intelligent. Here's the loud one who's just angry that his marriage is falling apart, or angry that he's old, or something. You have the same kinds of situations. You're dealing with humans and their feelings, and there's technical aspects as well, with notes, with words, with your connections you're making with other people. Oh, you live here, oh, this or that. You start to communicate. So I think the skills have a lot in common. And there's the unknown. You're thrust into it, and you don't know what's coming, and how do you respond? It's very important to know that, well, here's what it should be, I think. You should do everything you can do to promote yourself, to improve what it is you do. If you had the time, and let's use a really old-fashioned example of taking a piece of paper with the right info on it, folding it in 3 sections, putting it in an envelope, sealing it, and putting a stamp on it. That old-fashioned way of communicating. If you could do 200 in a day, along with your other things, good, do it. If you find your time could be spent doing something else other than stuffing the envelopes, fine. If you want to learn more about law, so you can read a contract and learn, oh, this clause, oh, that means this, that's good, you should. And if you can protect yourself that way, that's fine. If it comes to okay, I want to play these gigs. I'm going to call these coffee houses, restaurants, bars on my own, and I'm going to take the CD I sent. I'm going to then show up in addition, get to know people. All that's really good. You should do as much of those things as you can, but there's a limit to how many things you can do, and you may meet someone who's better at these particular skills, being a lawyer, promoting you, managing you, marketing you. Those things are all fine too. What?
Hey, sorry.
Oh.
Sorry. Hey, can we help you?
Supposed to tune the piano.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. We're just wrapping up here. We'll be done in like 10 minutes. Is that okay?
If you can, but okay, so you will hire people that you might need. The problem is going to come in that what if you just then completely trust the person, let them have complete carte blanche to do whatever, and you don't partake. That's where a huge mistake is. Your lawyer might be brilliant and really good, but you have to be taking part in this process. And everyone you hire for your, say, team that you are sort of putting together, slowly putting together, you've got to be involved in each of them with their technical stuff, what is they're doing, and be a part of it. Because if you're not, things will venture off and you'll be just more of a side item than the central item. I've seen that happen way too often. Students come in with a wide variety of people. Some thinking, hey, this is the way I'm going to make it. I'm going to start to play with this band. I'm going to go out on the road with this group. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make the connections at the school to do this, or I'm going to have the skills. Some of them think that. Sometimes professors will look and say, I can teach you this stuff. I know this works. I'm on the outside working. There is some of that, but then there's the people who just don't know what to expect and just have to get better at this. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. There's a lot of that from students. There's also the pressure with grades and that kind of stuff, like, oh, I have to learn things, but more important than learning, I have to have the right grades so I can get scholarships to afford this education. I see a lot of different types. I don't know that there's to answer it simply by saying what the students expect, what do the faculty expect. It's pretty diverse, and you have to pay attention to what the student is up to, and to keep throwing new things their way so they're exposed to more, and to have these options like, oh, you could do that, you can do this. People find out I get paid well because of my knowledge of music theory, that I can work in copyright cases, and I can say this structurally and that structurally. You could be making money as a music theorist combined with law. That seems preposterous. Very few people know that. And then take my little gig versus all the other unique gigs that are out there. So if they're learning about this, then they're way better off than if they hadn't come there in the first place. Hopefully, they learn new things like that. I think the metric for success for a lot of music administrators is, yes, how many do we graduate? Hopefully it's a high number. Hopefully they're successful either with grad schools or other occupations. Hopefully this came up yesterday, U.S. News and World Report rankings, how are we looking like that? I think a lot of it's that, and that's often the number one focus. So
should they use different metrics?
It'd be great. I think some of this assessment culture and some of just rankings is really preposterous and really holds people back. You've got to say, how many people created some new things once they left the school? They did something that had nothing to do with the school, it seemed. But you either got the courage to be an innovator, an entrepreneur, and went off and did stuff that's not related to your education. When those things happen, I think we have to say, good, the school did okay, we didn't do badly. You don't have to say, what I learned sophomore year, second semester, that's what I'm doing now. I think that will never happen. I think it's the odd stuff that occurs to you is what gets you places. It's not easy once you have the data to say, okay, well, that number is lower than it was. Well, you're measuring something different. And by the time you get it, and how do you get the information? And part of that's not easy to solve. It's just something that has to be addressed. But I think you should represent several things. You should or count several things. Who gets into the best grad schools? Who gets into an orchestra? Who started a business? Who then went to law school based on stuff you learned? Who went to business school? I think it would just be good to have, it sounds awful, but like a lot of anecdotal evidence, as well as numbers and various things you're counting, various metrics. I think suing students, suing downloaders of music is absolutely preposterous. It's silly, it's embarrassing, it's not going to do any good. This is how we're supposed to be getting music every which way you can. You're supposed to be getting from peer to peer. You're supposed to buy it at Amazon. You're supposed to sell ringtones. There are all these things to do. By suing downloaders, you're not accomplishing anything. You're not stopping the behavior. It doesn't seem to be a problem. I mean, people do not pay attention to law. They pay attention to ethics. I've never murdered anyone, and it's not because I read Title 18 of the United States Code. I know what ethics are. I have my sense of ethics. So law is just something I deal with in the sense of copyright, but law is not really what affects us. It's morality and ethics. It's not this stuff. And in downloading, it's like saying, hey, you didn't go see this movie because you recorded a DVR off television. Well, okay, that's called legal, you know. So these things that were illegal can become legal. They're just new means of getting entertainment, music and video. If you can get this music anyway, what if I get it at this website versus that website? The person who's getting it in the end thinks, well, I don't know, tax me my internet. I don't know how much I spend a month, and I don't know how much my gas and water bill. They vary according to usage. Maybe internet usage could vary according to price, according to what you download. It is very confusing for people to say, oh, that's not legal, that is legal. In Major League Sports, they'll say, any account of the events of this game, of this copyrighted broadcast without the express written consent of Major League Baseball is strictly prohibited. What a lot of nonsense. That's written by lawyers, and that means that you cannot talk about this game or you're breaking the law. So whoever thinks they understand copyright law, let alone consumers who just want to hear stuff and view stuff, they've got to be really let to go ahead and do what it is they're going to do anyway. And we have to find ways to monetize those things and not sue them and call them criminals.
Final question. Any idea on how to fix it?
Keep offering new things. Don't hire lawyers to sue people. That's put your time and energy into paying attention to what the customer wants and giving it to them. We all spend foolish amounts of money on phones and internet and everything else, cable television. We're going to do it anyway. Find ways of monetizing it. We'll spend more. We always have.